What's up, guys? Welcome back. This week, I'm going to go back to some of the Matterhorn content that I was lucky enough to get at the All-Ivy Showcase a few weeks ago. I was actually back down there this weekend for the All-Ivy Futures event, which was a younger age group. I believe it was the 2010s, 11s, and 12s. This time I was there as a coach, which was awesome. So last time I was there, it was with the older age group. We had a bunch of NCAA coaches and resources there, which is where I got a lot of the content that I'm going to keep releasing to you guys. This past week, I was actually coaching alongside some of the top prep programs in the country and engaging with some of these NCAA coaches that were there as well, which was awesome. So I was there in a little different capacity, got to run some practices and coach some games with kids from all over the world, which was wild. So it was just an awesome experience. It was great to engage with a lot of you guys on the podcast front that came up and said hi. So thanks a lot for that. It's always really cool to get to chat and engage with you guys. And I really love being involved with it. So I'm sure we'll get some solid content out of that stuff too. So I'll probably post up some of that across our social media. So keep an eye for that stuff. But it was just a really cool event. And I know I talk about it quite a bit, but there's not that many events that are really run with this level of professionalism and this level of actual value for the families. And that's kind of why I keep circling back to it. And this content that I give you guys is just another great example. So as you guys have now heard over the last couple episodes, I've had a chance to chat with some awesome guests from this. The first couple I released was Brian Wilsey, who runs the player development with Colorado Avalanche, and then Matt Gilroy, who's the assistant coach at Harvard now. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, maybe scoot back and check those out. I think it was episode 239 and 240 for those two episodes. Again, they're super brief because I didn't have a whole lot of time to talk to these guys, but the content was too good to not release for you guys because there's just so much value that they add. And then it's also just nice to hear some different voices that are actually working in the industry at a high level and have been at all these different, or been down all these different paths that a lot of the kids are going down. So make sure you check those out if you haven't seen it yet. And the feedback has been awesome on these episodes, by the way. Like, I'd love to keep hearing more from you guys on what you think of this type of content. It's not often that I get guests like this, but if it's something that you guys like, it's something I can definitely look at doing more and more. I think these conversations are really helpful for players and families, and even for coaches, because they can think a little bit differently or evolve their way of thinking about development and all those things, which is great. So I'd love to keep it going if it's something that you guys like. So this week I'm going to continue with the Matterhorn content. Another awesome guest I had the chance to meet and catch up with was Jason Guerrero. If you don't know Jason, he's been around all levels of the game as a player and a coach. He had an unreal career at Northeastern where he played for 4 years, was the captain in his last year. He's played pro for 10 years. Coached at a bunch of different Division I programs, and now he works in player development for USA Hockey. With each of these guests, I try to kind of dig into their niche, and for Jason, it's kind of the development model from the framework of USA Hockey and USA Hockey's perspective on what's going on. So it's a newer role for him, but he had a lot of knowledge, obviously, being around the game and now working with USA Hockey, being a part of their development from young kids all the way up to kids that are making the transition to NCAA and beyond. So he shared some really valuable thoughts on age-appropriate training, what development means, how to do the right things at the right time, and what's going to actually set you up or your player up for long-term success. Obviously, we can get caught up in short-term performance, but really having a framework of what development means and how it's actually going to affect the athletes in the long term. And then we finally touched on kind of where the game is heading, especially around the different development models between Canada, US, touched a little bit on stuff in Europe. And kind of what USA Hockey's perspective is on how to continue to grow the game, develop players, and then ultimately how that's actually looking in the numbers when we talk about the amount of kids getting Division I commitments, moving on to pro. The hot topic is the eligibility rule change, so getting his perspective on that and the kind of the USA Hockey mindset on what this might mean, what it might mean moving forward, what it means for them as a country. So it's just a really unique conversation and chance to get a lot of interesting information from a guy that's looking at things from the national level as opposed to just looking through the lens of one particular team or one particular program. So that was kind of what I tried to focus on. I hope this is something that you guys find interesting. I certainly felt like we could have kept talking about this stuff for a long time. Let's dive into it. All right, Jason, what's going on, man?
Nothing. Down in Florida. Excited.
Yeah, you've been here a few years.
Yeah, so I started the first year when it happened in 2020. So I've been here 5 years in a row.
So what are your, I guess, thoughts on the event? Because you've been now in like various roles
Yeah.
as you've been here. So kind of what are just some thoughts of what you think of it, and maybe some of the value that you think it might have to some of the families and the kids that are here?
Yeah. So it's funny, when we first started, I was working at Brown. So I was working at Ivy. It was like the all Ivy showcase. And it was during COVID. So it was actually a great opportunity for the kids, because a lot of kids in the prep schools weren't playing. So they were looking for ice. And it seems like, COVID didn't even happen down in Florida. There wasn't many rules. So Ryan did a great job of starting it here. And there's been, to be honest, like, long story short, like he got some great players here, and it turned into like a legit recruiting event, where now it's something where, as college coaches, we mark it on our calendar like we should probably be here, because there's good players. There's players that have gone Division I. There's kids that have signed in the NHL. So it's not just, him and Kate do a great job of the event, but the quality of hockey players is worth our time as college coaches. Obviously, I'm not coaching college anymore, but to be down here. And for me now, working with USA Hockey and having the privilege to be able to coach our Five Nations team this summer, which is the 09 birth year, there's always kids, and I see the list, and I'm like, all right, there's a few kids that, are going to be in Buffalo for our player development camps that I need to keep an eye on. So it just worked out. And Ryan and I were in each other's wedding party. So it's super, our worlds collide from friendship, and then the business side of it from recruiting.
That's
so
awesome.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Talk a little bit about that. Like, how has your role developed? So take us through a little bit of your your playing career, and then how that translated into coaching, and then now with the US program.
Yeah. So undersized, 5'6" guy. So you got to find a way, right? But going through the process as a younger kid, I was very fortunate to have some really good coaches. There was a gentleman named John Tonelli who won 4 Stanley Cups with the Islanders, and Rich Hansen, Sr., who was in the organization at that time. And they were, when we were younger, like playing, 14U, 15U at the time, or 16U, we were kind of, not looking back on it, we were doing things from a development side, a piece, like the small areas and who can make plays in tight areas, way back before, it became like a staple for USA Hockey. So I didn't even realize that was all happening. And then you kind of fast forward, I went through the development camps, made 15s, made 16s, made 17s, was just short of making our national program. And it started out in the 80 and 81 birth year. I'm an 81 birth year. And, just like any kid, you don't make it, and you have that fire. And I fast forward, I ended up playing junior hockey, but then I got, at the time it was called the Viking Cup, which now I think it's similar to what it's like the World Junior A Challenge, what they do now. So I made that, and so it was actually really, really interesting and fascinating, because you think that you're never going to be able to represent your country, and then all of a sudden, I'm 19 years old, and like, wow, I have this opportunity. And then you fast forward after the playing career, playing college hockey at Northeastern, and then playing 7 years professional. Last year, I was able to represent our country and coach our youth Olympic team. So it's just an amazing path. And I love the job that I have now, because growing up, it was all about development, right? And finding a way as a smaller guy, things that you need to do. And it's everything that I believe in. So I'm very fortunate that I got the job, and it's just timing wise. And it was hard to leave college hockey. I was at my alma mater where I played college hockey at Northeastern. So, but I'm happy where I'm at, and super excited to be in this role now.
Yeah. So what is the role? So exactly, on like a day-to-day, like outlining kind of your day-to-day activity and what it means to be in charge of development. And this is a key term that I'll ask you a little bit more about afterwards, but what exactly does that look like for you day to day?
Yeah. So day to day, with USA Hockey, there's 12 districts in the country for USA Hockey. And the districts that I'm responsible for, there's 5 other managers, if you want to call it that, for USA Hockey that do the same thing. We each pretty much have 2 districts. So that's, 6, that's 2 each, that's 12. My territory is New England and Massachusetts. Massachusetts is its own district within the country. Like Minnesota's its own district, Michigan's its own district, New York, it's its own district. So those 4 states are actually their own districts, and it's all off of the number of youth hockey players, right? But the day-to-day is anywhere within those two districts, I'm in a rink with any program from learn to skate all the way up to 21 years old, right? So I can be in a rink with little kids trying to teach them learn to play, learn to skate. And then I could be running a clinic on talking about, body contact at the 14-year-old age. So it varies from a development standpoint. So it's obviously the message, the 6-year-olds is going to be completely different than what we're trying to do with the 16-year-old, right? So, and which was hard for me in the beginning because I've only coached college hockey. I went from working construction for my dad, playing college hockey, playing pro hockey, to coaching hockey. So now communicating how I communicate to a college kid is completely different how I'm going to reel in 55 7-year-olds that are on the ice. So there was a lot of training that I had to take when I first got on board with USA Hockey, but it's been very eye-opening, and I wish I had this training before I got into coaching college because it's taught me how to communicate to kids. But we have so many youth hockey players in our country that there's so much room for growth of development for our kids. Like I truly feel that we're just kind of scratching the surface because we have the most youth hockey players in the world that we should dominate the world stage, but we aren't. We're very good and we've made great strides, but there's so much room for growth with our younger players. So, I'm not going to see any results like when I was at Northeastern anytime soon, but guys like myself and guys in the past who have, paved the way are making a difference in the future for these kids that are 6, 7 years old. Keep them in the sport. It's all about long player development. It's not, I say to parents, like, would you rather just drive a Ferrari right now or invest in your 401k so when you retire, you're set, right? So it's not, yes, we want to find that balance between winning and development at the younger age, but it's all about long player development. How long we can keep kids in the sport because they're having fun, and over time they're going to keep developing, and that's a big part of my job. Yeah. The day-to-day is in the ranks a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things that I am fascinated by, just as a guy that's more or less like studies the various different areas of hockey, whether we're in Canada or we're in the US, I'm starting to look a lot at some of these European development systems and all of that. If you had to maybe point out some of the differences or specifically about the US development plan, if we're talking from, youth levels up to whenever you let them go, whether it's to college or whatever, what does that look like? Is it systematized where you guys are like, okay, at this age, we should be working on kind of these things? And how does that compare, if to the Canadian versus European styles?
Yeah, the Canadians, so being, new to the job, but have a pretty good understanding of the landscape. So a lot of what USA Hockey has done very, very well over, decades is studying, going to Russia. When Guerrero, who kind of started the whole, he's the icon, the godfather of USA Hockey. We're in constant collaboration with Finland, constant collaboration with Sweden, and figuring out, talking with them and seeing how they've been developing. And, the state of Massachusetts has the same amount of youth hockey players as Sweden.
Yeah, right.
And if we took our best players, our best 16-year-olds in Massachusetts and played the best 16-year-olds in Sweden, I think Sweden would probably give it to us. So why is that, right? So you scratch your head and you're like, why are they able to do that? So yes, there's been so much of the studying of these other countries to figure out, and we've done a lot of the modeling. And you could see a little bit of is when the ADM model, the American development model for USA Hockey came out in 2009. It was the whole small areas, and not just small area games, but the game is unscripted. And if we make practices scripted, where we're saying you go here, you go around that cone, well, in the game the cones are going to move, right? And the game is unscripted. So we've got to make sure that from a development standpoint that we're allowing these kids to make decisions. And a lot of the strides that we've made for USA Hockey is collaborating with these other countries that it's worked for them. So it's like, whoa, and a lot of the models have come from soccer, from football in these European countries, and how they model their programs, and hockey has kind of modeled it in some of these European countries. So we're taking bits and pieces from everybody. It's like me as a college coach. I've worked or played for 29 different coaches. So I take little bits and
Yeah,
pieces
for
from all
sure.
of them, what worked, what didn't work. So we're kind of doing the same thing. And we've done actually a very, very good job with USA Hockey and what, the path looks like and how we're able to organize our structure within a country. But again, we're not going to get comfortable and we still have a lot of work to do. But it's, we study with these other countries a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So from a development standpoint, like I was having another conversation earlier today, and the word development is one of those terms where like it means nothing and it means everything, depending on what you're talking about. So if we're talking about development, and maybe we can kind of keep it to the age of these kids that are here, or maybe even a little bit younger. What does development mean for these kids or for their parents they're trying to find the best way to get their kid to the next level, or the kid is trying to find the best way to get to the next level? So when you're talking about you need to make sure you're developing, what does that mean for you, like in your opinion? And then what should that mean in terms of these families and these kids deciding where they should go and play if they want to eventually be able to come and make it to see you one day?
Yeah. It's like one of those words like development and, people, the buzzwords, right? They come out, people talk about culture and it's like, yeah, you can say all those things, but do you truly know what, a successful culture looks like or development? So, but for development, for me, a lot of it too, and for USA Hockey, a lot of it, what people forget about is stuff that is like outside the glass, like the adversity pieces of adversity and kids failing is a big part of development. And right now with the climate where hockey is, and a lot of kids aren't present, and we're worried about jumping to the next, we're not focused on how we could be better today than we were yesterday. It's almost like, what team am I going to play for? Am I going to sign my NHL contract? What is my next contract? And I understand that we need to set goals, but development is being in the moment. And it's not just the skills. It's the guys that ultimately play for a long time in the NHL, or guys that find ways to play without the puck, guys that have a B game. Like, talent doesn't beat talent anymore. Like that we line everybody up on the goal line that's out here right now at this age. They're all going to look the same when they get through the red line. But now we throw a puck into the mix, like who can make plays, right? And it's developing our younger kids. And the thing is with development for the younger kids is like, yeah, a lot of coaches, I go into these clinics and they're doing drills that they were doing in 1980 as players. Well, that's not going to work with the 8-year-old right now. Like, times change. Like, people use email now. Like, things, it changes, and it's hard to accept change sometimes. And that's a big part of, like, for development is yes, I'm going into these clubs and I'm helping with development and what's age appropriate for an 8-year-old. Right? What you're doing, like, people are doing power play breakouts with 8-year-olds. It's like they're not even supposed to be playing full ice yet. They're not even focused on offsides yet. So that's a big piece of development, is making sure we're always focused on long player development. And the only way that's going to work is if we're doing age appropriate drills. And that's a big part of what happens when these kids get to 16, 17, 15, 16, 17 years old. If they're not working on those things at a younger age, eventually everybody can skate to that red line, look the same. So now who can play the game? Again, they're all talented kids. They can all skate. Everybody's big and strong. But as a country, we've got to keep focusing on the development piece of how to play without the puck. Because talent, everybody's talented. You watch the NHL, everybody's good. It's not back in the 90s when it's like, oh, we just get the big guy and then the small guys came into the game. It's like everybody can play. So for me, it's a lot of the development is what's age appropriate, and make sure we're sticking to it and we're not just veering off because we did something in 1980. And that's a big part for me, is coaching the coaches. So when I run a clinic in, Andover, Mass, we have 55 kids on the ice, but I have 26 coaches on the ice, and it's not a day off for them. So they come on the ice, I show what we're going to do, what the clinic is all about. And then the coaches, I say, you guys got a station, and then you're going to move from station to station, because I'm going to leave. And it's you that's got to deliver the message now to these kids. Like, the volunteers and the dads and some of the, coaches that coach played the game, but they never, just like me, never coached little kids. So how do I do that? What's age appropriate? What am I doing? And it's a perfect example is, so my son played 6U hockey this year for the Eagles in Massachusetts, which they play full ice, which is crazy, 6-year-olds old. But we didn't play any of the games. We just practiced. And I'm not against full ice, but if it's the only thing you're doing at a young age, it's going to be really hard to move forward. So, but Patrice Bergeron, we all know Patrice Bergeron, was the other coach with me. And I found that fascinating and he's such a humble, I don't think anybody in the world everybody likes Patrice Bergeron. He said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to coach my kid. And he's just a humble guy. And he's like, I took the classes online, like the level 1. He's like, I have a lot to learn. And this is a guy that's played, Stanley Cup, playing the NHL forever. And if he doesn't know how to coach 6 years old that knows the game better than arguably anybody, there's so much room for growth for us teaching, like my dad who coached me, so it was very, I was amazed to hear him say that, because he's like, I'm going to lean on you a little bit. And I'm like, lean on me?
Yeah.
Like I play in the American League.
Yeah,
but
that's so funny.
That's the part of development, is that for us is that we're making sure that we're, as a country, we're educating our coaches and our players, like what is age appropriate, and always, always, always with the mindset of what long player development is.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's a cool story.
Yeah,
that's
he's awesome. Like such a humble guy. But then on the other side of it, on the red line, you have I think it was 8U. Chara's, we share the same ice for practice. Chara's at the 8U.
Really?
And he's like running like breakouts, and I'm like grinding my teeth. But
that's awesome.
But they're
man.
passionate coaches.
Well, so as these kids kind of move up the ranks, like one of the themes we've been talking about here a lot is the eligibility change from, kids can now jump into the CHL and vice versa. And I was listening to you speak last night. You were throwing out some stats on like what the numbers are looking like. So from a USA Hockey standpoint, from a development standpoint, where are you guys at in terms of, I don't know if necessarily retaining players is the right way of saying it, because you want to move players on to higher levels and all that stuff. But what's the perspective from the USA Hockey standpoint, and, still being a leader where, kids aren't trying to jump up into Canada to play necessarily? Or is that part of the strategy where like you're happy to get those guys to go there to continue their development trek on their way to reach a higher level? Yeah,
no, and it's such a interesting time, right? Like we were just talking offline there. It's like it could be changing right now. From a standpoint of us and Canada and major junior, I think it's great for hockey in general. I think it's really good for college hockey. I mean, time will tell a little bit of like these major junior kids that are going to come to college hockey. I think it's, for a whole, I think it's great. For USA Hockey in general, I traveled to Bangkok and Thailand. I was in Brazil trying to educate those countries on learn to play hockey and grow hockey in general to the world. That's why we're in it. Of course, you're always going to have pride for your country, and we want our US players to be the best and play on all these teams and have more players in the NHL. But as a whole, we want what's best for the game, right? And we're always trying to educate everybody about it. It's just such a weird, interesting, how it's going to all shake out. We said there's 141 kids committed as of yesterday from major junior to colleges since the change of the rule, and 127 of them actually are Canadian, and I think only 10 are American, and then a couple Europeans. So, it's a little bit of a eye-opening in a sense of, wow, there's more Canadians. And it's not, I think, like I said, I think it's great for college hockey, but it also, I look at it as, all right, well, now they're going to start taking some jobs, which is fine. At the end of the day, best players are going to play. And do they all pan out in college hockey? I don't know. Time will tell. But I also think it's an opportunity for us as USA Hockey and our U.S. hockey players and coaches to say, we could be better, right? And it's not that, I mean, I love Canada. All my buddies in college are from Canada, but there is that pride of, all right, well, now, as of today, Canada has just surpassed us with the most college commits as a whole. So 285 kids have committed to college since 9/1 of 2024. That's counting major junior and kids that have not played major junior. And of those 280, not 285, Canada has committed 216, and the U.S. only has 179. So Canada just now has more commits.
There you go. Overnight, eh?
So and I don't know what that information means, but it just shows you that, hey, like, if we want to be 400 commits and Canada only has 200, we need to be better developing our younger players, right? So that's the exciting part for me. Again, I'm not going to see any results tomorrow, like, running the PK at Northeastern. You see results immediately. And for me, it's more of NUSA hockey. It's the long player development. What we're doing now is going to shape the path of what these kids like in the NHL in 10, 15 years. So
yeah, interesting. Well, so I guess maybe we'll go last question. A lot of these kids that are here, even at this event, they're questioning, where should I go? Like, where should I play? What's the league that I should play in? And, a lot of these kids are aware of the change as well. And it's like, what is the move in terms of trying to get the maximum amount of exposure, whatever that means. So from a playing standpoint, from a development standpoint, from an exposure standpoint, what would maybe your advice be to some of these kids that they're looking for a place to play? Like, simply put, where should I go? Like, what is the answer in your opinion to that kind of question, or what are the factors that they should consider?
It's a tough one. It's not that I mean, everything just changes, but it's hard for these kids. Like, there's just the sport's growing. It's hard. Like, it's hard to make it. The air gets thinner and thinner. Every year you get a little bit older. Like, there's someone that's trying to take your job. The saying is it's hard to stick in the NHL. The easy part's making it. The hard part is sticking, right? Making a career out of it, because someone's always going to be younger and better and trying to take your job. I think with and I've said this to some kids that we were recruiting, like, over the years of being a college coach, that asking that same question, like, where should I go? As the kids you can't hide anymore. Like, if you're a good player, there's enough advisors, coaches, we all know each other, the Instat, all these different, the internet. Like, it's not like when I was playing, the coaches would be like, you get like a roadmap and go, and you could find some, you didn't even know who was playing, and you can find guys. There's no more of that. Is everybody, the good players are going to play in the appropriate spots. So for the players and the parents, if I get it, I want to play in the USHL. It's a great league. Why wouldn't you? But if you don't have any USHL teams calling you, and you have 15 NA, North American League teams calling you, that's probably your market. If you don't have any NA teams calling you, have NCDC teams calling you, that's probably your market where you should go. I'm not saying don't ever think about playing the USHL, because there's kids that go from the NCDC, NA to the USHL. There's always that growth in players, but a little bit of it is who's communicating to you, who wants you, right? Like, you want to go somewhere where they want you. Like, you want to go somewhere where you're going to play. And nothing drives me more insane when kids just make the jump from, say, prep school, and they just go right to the USHL because it's the USHL and they want to say that they play in the USHL, but they almost have like that off year. It almost stunts their growth of development for a full year, where I'm not saying you have to go to a place and dominate, but you got to be realistic with yourself too, of where you're at. And there's nothing to say that you won't end up in the USHL. But it's a little bit as just hearing of the coaches that are talking to you. Again, I would say to kids at the D1, D3 that wanted to play D1 and go to Brown, they're like, I have these 6 NESCAC schools talking to me. And I'm like, we're not in a position to commit you right now. But that, to the parents, it's the ugly truth. I'm like, that might be your market. That might be where you should be. So that's what I usually say to the parents. Like, if you have all these USHL teams calling you, that's probably your market. Now you got to make some decisions of, where do you see me on the depth charts? What's it look like moving forward? Who's in, who's out? But yeah, that's how I would answer that question, I guess. Is it's hard. There's so many places to play, but go somewhere where you're going to play, develop, have fun. It's still a game. We want to have fun, and who wants you?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think one of the nice things about actually getting down here, because Ryan had told me about this, like the event and kind of what to expect, but it's one thing talking about it, and then it's another thing to come down here and actually hear people like yourself give the actual information from someone who's been around. You've coached at these schools, and now you're with USA Hockey, and you're one of the people that they want to have come and talk to them.
Yeah.
So to be able to hear information from somebody like you or some of these other coaches that are here is just super, super valuable, which is really what makes this a super high-end event, where they actually get to hear it right from you guys. So I appreciate you being a resource that people can listen to, and thanks for taking a couple minutes to chat here today.
It was awesome. Thank you.
So that's a bit of insight from Jason Guerrero. Again, I was pumped to kind of get the chance to connect with him, not just because of his experience as a player and a coach, which is obviously phenomenal, but just because of how aligned he is with the messages that we share in terms of what development means and kind of I don't even want to say the right way of doing things, because there's a lot of different ways of doing things, but just what it actually means to be thoughtful about your approach to development, what you should be doing at different times. So again, I felt like we could have kept talking for a long time, but it was great to just get some perspective from a guy looking at things from, the USA Hockey standpoint, more of a national level, and really take like a zoomed out view of what it means. If there's one thing I noticed talking to Jason and even other guys about development in general too, is that it's very difficult to specifically define, because development looks different for every individual. So there isn't really a one size fits all way of doing things. We touched on, like you heard, a little bit about age appropriate training, doing the right things at the right time. And there's kind of generic guidelines for that, but really it's important to identify what specifically is going to fit you and where you're at with your own development journey. I think another awesome takeaway that I had from that conversation was how to decide on where you should go, where you should play. He touched on, playing in your market and what might be the appropriate level for you based on the interest that you're getting. And I think that's a concept that is lost on a lot of people and a lot of players, because they're in a rush to try to get to the highest level that they can all the time. And sometimes it's better to, take a step back and see where you're actually going to go, what team you're going to be able to actually make, what league you're actually going to be able to make and be an effective player, and not just kind of get buried in the lineup. And this is something that for me personally is just maybe my own bias of where I align more, but that's usually the advice that I give to players and families, is go where you're wanted, where you feel like you're going to play, where you actually are going to get some touches and feel good about your game. Because I remember as a player, the times where I was playing my best was when I felt like I had confidence, I had a little bit of swag to my game, and could go out there and play freely. And there's a lot of situations that I've been in also as a player where I didn't feel like I had that. And you're a lot more tentative. You're not feeling as comfortable. You're not as open to experiment and try things and continue to progress as a player. And that's just not my style. So it was nice to hear Jason kind of touch on those same things. I think that's really good advice that everybody can kind of take away from that conversation. So with all that, again, it was awesome to get a chance to talk to Jason and some of these other guests that I got at Matterhorn, an event that just really aligns with what we're doing here. And again, that's why I've mentioned it a few times now, but that's why we're excited to host it coming next May. The All Path series is going to be across Canada, but we're going to be hosting the event in Ontario, right here in Windsor. So if that's something that's interesting to you guys, make sure you keep up with it. We'll have information on our channel. MatterhornFitEvents.com is where you can go to find out more about that. And we're really, really excited to collaborate on it, because it's just such a good education platform for a lot of these players to understand more about the OHL, more about the NCAA, and the families to be educated. I can't tell you how many conversations I have where there's just information that I take for granted that is true about, whatever it is, development, what team you should go play for, things about certain leagues, talking about agents, all this stuff. I take for granted sometimes knowing the information, and there's so many families that just don't know it. So it's great to be at a place like this, a showcase like this, where you actually are getting value back on the education side, not just exposure, not just a well-organized event, but actually learning from people that are in the industry. So keep an eye on that, whether it's on our page, the Matterhorn page, even with BioSteel, obviously collaborating on all this stuff. So keep an eye on that, and you'll learn more about all that information that's coming out soon. So big thanks again to Jason for jumping on, and we'll see you guys next week.